Great. Well, thank you all for joining us here on this gray, blustery day. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to Nickle at Noon, and just remind you that we've got a full program. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but lots of really exciting things coming up. And I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, and it's with gratitude that we are here and able to share this program with you. And next slide. You have tuned in to Nickle at Noon online. We've been online since September 2020, learning as we go. But so far it's been pretty great, I have to say. It's really wonderful to see all your smiling faces. We do this every Thursday from 12 to 1. It's always free. There's the meeting codes. That will be the same for the rest of the term, so make a note. Full program details can be found on our website, as well as postings to your favorite social media platform. And if you prefer, we're always happy to add you to our mailing list and email you all of our event news. Just reach out to Marla or myself if you're interested in that. For the duration of the presentation, we'd ask that you keep yourself on mute. We love to hear from you, but we'll ask that we don't unmute ourselves and ask questions until the end of the presentation. If you have something burning, just put it in the chat and Marla or I will try and ask the question or answer the question. We are recording this presentation, and just to let you know that after it's cleaned up, it will appear on our YouTube channel. Participant names and the chat do not appear. However, if you speak, your voice will be included in the recording. And last but not least, I'm Michelle Hardy. I'm one of the curators with Nickle Galleries and your host today. Marla is running shotgun today. She's our front end manager and the co-host of Nickle at Noon. And just to remind you that next week we're featuring Shelley Ruth Butler. Shelley is an anthropologist, and I've known about her work for a long time. Super excited about this talk, Curatorial Dreaming, Experiments with Museums and Heritage Sites. If you have an interest in museums, galleries, heritage, and sort of transforming these institutions for the future, I would suggest joining in next week, same time, same place. But today's presentation is Simone Saunders, Tufting Our Time, and I have to say I'm so excited to welcome Simone here. I'm a bit of a fangirl, Simone. I've been following you since discovering your work on, must have been the AU Arts grad show last year. Simone Elizabeth Saunders is a Canadian artist who primarily works with fibre, using a tufting gun and a punch needle to create colorful three-dimensional textiles. She uses these very explosive sounding tools to celebrate womanhood and to express a rich and vibrant Black history. She only graduated last year, and in that short time, she's already won numerous awards for her work, including the National 2020 Bank of Montreal's National First Art Competition, AU Arts Board of Governors Graduating Student Award for Fibre, Illingworth Kerr Galleries Award for Academic Achievement, and the Surface Design Association's Outstanding Student Award, and that last one is an international award. So good on you, Simone. She's been featured in Canada's House&Home magazine, CBC Arts, What's You At with Tom Power, CBC Radio One, Booooooom, Galleries West, etc., etc. And she currently is involved in an exhibition, the exhibition Threading Black at the Alberta Craft Council with artist Eva Byrne-Hanu an exhibition that's curated by Shimara Hogarth and is currently featured in the Edmonton Craft Gallery. I think that it's coming to Calgary eventually. I hope so. Simone, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. You can hear me okay?
Can hear you okay.
Perfect. How's that?
Looks good.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here today. What a wonderful program and a way to spend your lunch hour. So thank you, Michelle. And I'd love to introduce myself, Simone Elizabeth Saunders. I am a fiber artist of Jamaican and Canadian heritage. And I really want to thank you for holding space for me today. I'm looking forward to sharing my practice with you. I, as Michelle mentioned, am a very recent graduate from the Alberta University of the Arts, where my major was in fiber. And I did have a very strong focus in printmaking as well as drawing. So what have I been up to? Here I am holding my rug tufting loop pile gun. It is a handheld machine which was invented to create large area rugs. I create large scale portraiture for the wall. And it's a unique medium as a fine art. And I describe it as painting with threads. My loom is faced upright and I stretch rug warp or primary rug warp or monk's cloth across it. And I pierce the gun into the cloth using a trigger and I guide the gun as I create. So it's a nice synchronicity we're getting. I've tapped into a very small community, but growing community of global group of artists and hobbyists who use the gun for their practice. And I have to say, I am very addicted to the process and the power of holding this power tool and creating with it. I truly feel like my own superhero when I'm holding this gun and the rigor and discipline and focus that it requires for me to engage with it. So for really fine detail, I use my trusty Amy Oxford punch needle, and it really is the analog version of the tufting gun, but it really allows me to get in there and really put some extra detail into the large tapestries. So the summer of 2018 is when I started my journey with tufting, and I really dove into exploring it within my graduating year at AU Arts. So let's rewind a year ago today when the pandemic hit. And I know that we all felt the aftermath with closures and disconnects. And, you know, it really has been a tough year of isolation and adjustment for everyone. And these pieces that you see here are entitled It Matters One, which is the masked man, and It Matters Two, which is the woman with her hands over her face. These were created in March of 2020. And at the time, I was really feeling a disconnect from my peers and my instructors. And as a graduating student, feeling the rigor of wanting to graduate and really being enveloped in course loads and with engaging with everyone, I really wanted to keep the momentum and wanted to keep creating. So I discovered an online festival called the Social Distancing Festival, which is still an online global platform for artists of all different mediums who were affected by this pandemic to showcase themselves. And so myself, I did a collaboration with an Ohio artist, a Black artist who was born in the South Side of Chicago by the name of Tikiki Walker. And she is a multidisciplinary artist. And together we created our own separate pieces, but we really connected over themes of social justice within the Black community and what is expressed through our art. And Tikiki brought forward a Washington Post article that had just been released which was highlighting how Black men in particular were being profiled for wearing masks for their protection against COVID-19, but were being perceived as menacing by certain members in society. And so we each created our individual pieces stemming from this article and speaking with one another. And to me, it was really cathartic at that time, just during the break of the pandemic, to have this connection across borders with Takiki and really fueling one another's craft. And so I created these works mostly in response, realizing the inequitable treatment that marginalized communities were receiving, not having the care and testing centers available to protect them from COVID-19. And I know that, these biases, they're not new to the Black and Brown communities, but they were definitely amplified within this global crisis. And so after these pieces were created, the following month was truly the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. And truly the world watched in horror over the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, and we witnessed the horrific death on an online platform of George Floyd. And we cried for justice for Breonna Taylor, and we still cry and demand justice for all of the deaths of our Black brothers and sisters and who have suffered and endured police brutality. So as a way for me to reconcile what was going on globally, I created this piece, and it was a tribute to Ahmaud Arbery. And it was a very emotional piece. These were very dangerous times, and I felt the whole world was feeling it. And so I had this gift of being able to immerse myself in my craft and within tufting, and created this piece almost in a way of healing. And there it is, Ahmaud Arbery. Now, racism within a global lens that was really being highlighted at that time, it was also realizing that racism is within Canada as well. I mean, historically, racism has existed toward our Indigenous peoples and our Black, Brown, and immigrant communities. And so I continued on this vein of Black Lives Matter, and I created this piece of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was really inspired by this gesture, and also within his 1968 speech of "We shall overcome." And to me, I felt, we should, and we must persevere. And within that time, in the summer months, there were so many protests going on within the global landscape, but also within Calgary. And really realizing within these protests what a strength and vigor there was within the communities here, and especially the Black community. And there was one protest in particular where our allies were asked to really nest and come around the Black community, and for the Black community to come within the center of the protest at Olympic Plaza. And my goodness, there was such a surge of energy of everyone realizing how many of us were in this community and coming together strong. And so these pieces really speak to me in that sense. And I was inspired by that, because leadership and going out and advocating for ourselves is something I've always been passionate for and about. When I was in university, I was the president of the student association. And so it's important for me to lift up my community and amplify our voices. And so that's why these textiles, they highlight Black excellence and showcase the strength and perseverance that Black people have. So within my last year of university, I really developed a strong focus within my practice, studying preconceived judgments that are really rampant towards the Black female body. specifically oppressive colonial narratives that render the Black body less than, and in the same breath, that deems the Black female body unnatural due to our physical makeup, as well as caricatures and stereotypes circulating within North American culture, and this comedic fodder that's used as a tool to put down Black people and Black women in particular. And so it's really important for me to aid in the racial emancipation of the people and to highlight beauty and strength and resilience, as I noted before. And Maya Angelou said so powerfully in her Freedom of Speech in 1973 that the Black woman is an integral, if not the most important part of the family unit. And there's a kind of strength that is almost frightening in Black women. It's as if a steel rod runs right through from the head to the feet. And I believe that we have to thank Black women, not only for keeping the Black family alive, but also the white family, end quote. So that was Maya Angelou. And I agree. And I utilize a lot of color within my textiles because I really believe that there is a high frequency that the union of color can create, and the vibration that is color to denote strength and joy and to emphasize the power of a people. And I mean, this stems from my soul, my Caribbean ancestry filled with tropics and bright colors and livelihood and delights. So I bring forward a lot of that into my textiles. This piece, She Holds the Key, I really was, and I really do, draw a lot from pop culture and contemporary events within my textiles. And this inspiration is from Serena Williams. I admire her strength to overcome diversity and the criticisms that she's had to endure within her discipline. She is an example of a Black woman who is constantly being criticized for her body, and she is an icon. She's always in the face of adversity, and she is a Wonder Woman of Black excellence and leadership. And so some context to this piece is that much of my practice, there's a side that I am really enamored by the beauty of Art Nouveau and Rococo, and really the design from those eras and color really capture femininity and grace and this alluring sensuality of womanhood. And so I started to subject the Black female body within narratives that capture these nuances and inspiration from these eras. And usually it's women who are quite prevalent in North American culture, musicians, leaders, sports champions, like you see here, Serena Williams. And I imagine a whimsy and the cyclical patterns from Art Nouveau, the golds, the ornate contours and bold outlines that are often featured in works of Alphonse Mucha or Klimt, and really in eras where exclusively white bodies were showcased. And so I draw from this style and I reclaim power by highlighting Black womanhood. This piece is called She Summons, and it is inspired by the one and only Queen Latifah. So I have a theater background. I was classically trained in theater from the University of Alberta, and I've experienced over a decade of acting on the national stage and doing producing and writing. And so I try and I hope to bring a strong sense of dramaticism within each portrait that I create. I consider a narrative, and from there I become invested in the subject. I think about current ideologies and events, and also drawing from my own personal landscapes. And when I tuft, there really is an improvisation of being in the moment, even if I have a preconceived notion in my head as to what the piece will look like or what's coming in next. I really allow for when I'm having that rhythm with the gun and with the piece to allow it to inform me as I go as well. And so I become immersed within each piece. This piece was inspired by Nina Simone. I really use my training and my romance with Shakespeare quite often to inspire a gesture or a gaze or a pattern within some of the pieces that I create. And so, historical literature like Hamlet and Macbeth and Titus Andronicus are always whispering in my ears and really a part of who I am. And to me, the iambic pentameter within the writing of Shakespeare has a particular rhythm that often reminds me of my heritage, my Jamaican Creole language called patois. And there's a correlation between the two that is really undescribable to me, but patois has a very rhythmic, very poetic sound to me, and there really is a synchronicity between the two. This is a piece that I created for my grandmother. It's called Duppy Duplicity. This is another piece that I created recently, again being inspired very much so by Art Nouveau. And I mean, the statement behind which Art Nouveau was very heavily about advertising. And so for me, I take those slogans that really lift up a people. And so this states protect Black women behind. This piece is a work that I created in my graduating semester, which is at the Alberta Craft Council right now with my show with Eva Birhanu. And this is a self-portrait called Selfie, or She Emerges. And it is about emerging and truly being seen and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. And to me, it's a real important thing to realize as an artist to not always hide behind your work, but be one with it and embody it in a way. It's a lot of emotion and like a relationship that goes into building these pieces for me. And I really put my whole self and incorporate all the backbone of my past experiences, my journey in theater and producing, acting, writing, and running a theater company, and being president of the Students Association and serving tables and being a competitive dancer and a volleyball player and being a Royal Conservatory pianist and everything, my time at AU Arts, my relationships, and I bring it forth and forge it as my career as an artist. And it all seems so new. I've been tufting for a year and a half now, and I really use my experiences to support and guide me. This piece, She Grows, was featured on CBC Arts. There's a nice little video of me creating the piece if you go on to CBC Arts Instagram page, as well as their website. And it kind of describes this in more detail, but She Grows focuses on a young Black girl, and she's wearing the classic fedora that within Black iconography represents the Black Panthers. And I'm thinking a lot about youth and how they are coping with this pandemic and realizing it, and how, in particular, young Black children are realizing the Black Lives Matter movement and how these kids are really growing into the skin that they're in, given the social climate and these isolations and what's happening within the movement. And so I put a leopard within it. And the leopard to me is a very mysterious and beautiful creature. And it captures femininity and grace. And both the leopard and the girl are standing on top of this abstracted, rocky waterfall. And to me, that really speaks to the fact that we never step into the same river twice. When challenged with adversity, Black women are often told to turn the other cheek, or, let it flow over them, let it be like water, and to let the restlessness and the inequalities that we face to flow around us. It's a close-up shot. So this piece really captures the notion of drawing from strength from nature, and that we should all be equals as inhabitants of this world. So we move forward and feeling that we must make a change, not only for us, but for the youth that are to come and who are here. This is a piece called Gems. And I do often have a lot of large predatory animals that are reflected within my work. And that to me really speaks to the otherness that Black people experience, that sense of being other, and that kind of kinship with these solitary animals, and this kind of exchange of power and love and beauty. And realizing right now that this world, to me, needs artists more than ever to capture this moment in history, to capture the pandemic, to bring light and beauty in this time of isolation, and to advocate for Black lives. Allyship is so important, and arming ourselves with knowledge and acceptance, and really being tuned in to the political landscape of our time. And I really, within my own knowledge and what I have to share, try and reflect this within my textiles. And although they might have dark undertones, to me, I really want to capture predominantly a beauty and grace within what I create. There's a collage. And I want to thank you for letting me share a snippet of my practice with you. And I'm really loving this journey, and I'm not stopping creating, and I'm looking forward to what's next. And right now, as Michelle had mentioned, I have a group show with Eva Birhanu, who's also my Fibre sister from AU Arts, and that's in Edmonton at the Alberta Craft Council. And yes, it is coming to Calgary. I didn't get the exact dates, but it is in the spring/summer coming to Calgary. So be sure to look into that and join me on my Instagram or website, which is featured there on the slide. And at the moment, I'm working diligently creating a solo show for New York. So more of that information is to come. I've been working hard at that, and due to the pandemic, the timeline is shifting. So I do have to be like water and adjust, but it's all great, and I'm really looking forward to what's to come. So thank you so much.
Wow, Simone, your work is it's exactly what we need in February. Oh, thank you, Saskia Arts. The exhibition will be in Calgary at C-Space, the C-Space Alberta Craft Council, in June through August. So something to look forward to this summer. Hopefully we can all meet there and buy fruit and vegetables out in the lawn. And
Yeah.
Yep, let's hope. So we still have Simone here, and there's some just wonderful comments in the chat. But we could, unless you have to rush off, Simone, maybe we could take a few questions.
Yeah, that's great.
So brilliant color, brilliant content. I wanted to ask, and it's a trite question, but maybe it'll get people going. What are the materials? Are you using wool? Are you using acrylic? What are you actually punching with?
You know, I wish I could afford wool. Wool is an expensive habit, especially for the size that I create. So right now, like I find a lot of joy in just going to Michael's, and I use like just acrylic 4mm, 5mm yarn that fits in both my punch needle and my gun. And yeah, really lucky to find some really vibrant colors, some neons. Yeah, so it's a bit of a color addiction.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I guess the advantage of acrylic is it's inexpensive and readily available.
Yes,
Yeah.
and because I use a rug loop pile tufting gun, there's also a cut pile, and so the difference is that the gun itself in mine will shoot the yarn through and bring it back. So it's a continuous piece, whereas the cut pile will push it through the cloth and cut it. So then the pile itself is just plush. And so I find with the loop gun, I'm really able to use different strengths of yarn because I don't need my gun to be able to cut through it. So to be able to get some sparkly yarn and some softer yarns, I'm lucky to be able to do that.
Just answering a question about the artist. Who was the artist? It was Alfonso Mucha, who was also someone that I looked at way back when. And yeah, really a really interesting time in craft and textile history. Did you move seamlessly from printmaking to tufting? How did your printmaking technique inform your textiles? Love how vivid it is.
Thank you so much. I did find it quite seamless, and I still do use some printmaking techniques. I always collage and will draw my piece before I start my tufted piece. And so I still utilize a lot of my drawing techniques, and sometimes if I want to be a bit more experimental, then I will use my print techniques to help influence the starting point to my tufts.
Okay, does anybody want to unmute themselves? Is there a tufting community in Alberta like the one that Chihuly built for glass blowing in Seattle? That's something to aspire to.
Yes. I know that there are some artists who have a tufting gun in Calgary, and some of them have reached out to me, which is really nice, even just to get to know who else is using this tool. But in terms of like a community or a center, I'm not sure. Not that I know of. I know that Fern School of Craft, like she had acquired a tufting gun, and I think is looking forward to teaching some courses, and that's in Edmonton. But yeah.
Simone, is it like pneumatic? Is it really noisy?
Yes, it has like a nice like buzzing sound to it. I'm trying to think of a tool that sounds similar, but it's the back and forth motion of it piercing the cloth that is quite rhythmic. It's not too loud. I don't have to wear earplugs. The only thing I do have to start wearing is a mask, because the way that it pushes the fibers through, I found I was inhaling a lot of those fibers. So definitely be safe. If you have a tufting gun, I recommend wearing a mask.
Another question, couple of questions coming in now. Simone, are you represented by a gallery, or how do people access your meaningful and beautiful art? I'll answer that for you. Stay tuned. Amazing insight and outstanding presentation. Thank you for sharing your process and your personal inspirations as a proud Black woman. Thank you, Carolyn Ryder. Jenna writes, Simone, can you talk about how the qualities of your materials relate to your subject?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question. In regards to representation, yes, I am represented. I'm represented by a gallery within New York, which I have yet to announce. We're kind of working behind the scenes right now and waiting for the most opportune moment to announce me. So please stay tuned. I'm so excited about it. But in the meantime, you can visit my website and there is a connection for you to get in touch with me. Also through my Instagram, Simone Elizabeth Textiles. I check my DMs. But in terms of sales of the work, that is on hold just for a brief period of time until I'm announced. And the next question about how my materials influence my work, you know, the actual result of the tufting definitely influences me in terms of the tactile nature of the pieces and wanting to touch it and be at one with it. I mean, that is really important to me. The materials of the yarn itself, I more focus on, like I said, color and the union of color and the emotion that color projects. But oftentimes, like if I'm deciding between a solid yarn or a velvet yarn or a sparkly yarn, that also I do want to consider emotion and what those convey and what they're going to be in relation to within the piece.
Flaneur 13 has written, Joseph Alpers is quoted, "Thus art is not an object, but it's an experience." And today was just that. And building on that, you know, once you talked about your background in theater and music, it's like the penny dropped because that performance really comes through in the work. And I also wanted to comment that, you know, often we think of textiles as very small scale, very planned, very sort of delicate. Your work is big and bold. And I wondered if you could comment on, you know, why you made those choices.
I think there really is that direct relation with really craving to get that tufting done and to have the ability to make those large pieces. And to me, that's equated to wanting to amplify Black womanhood and Black narratives and using a device that is predominantly used to create pieces that are walked on the floor. And for me to use a tool like that to embody these strong Black powerful narratives that are larger than life and enigmatic and colorful, and to put them on the wall, there is that relationship for sure.
And there's a spontaneity to your work that is, again, maybe it's just apparent spontaneity, but again, for textiles, that's really hard to you know, sort of be responsive. There's a question from Hope Smith. Is texture a theme in your life overall?
I think so. I mean, wanting to touch things and be connected to people, places, and things. I mean, the touch is very much a big part of my life. And that's a really good question, because there is that question as to, you know, I could paint these pieces. I often will start with a graphic design, as you saw with the Black Lives Matter pieces. I mean, I could just post that as well and create from there. But yeah, you're right. It's the rigor and the physicality that tufting requires, and that the textures that come from it, I find are so inviting and very unique to the fiber world. It's something that textiles just, it makes it above the rest for me, that no other medium can.
Well, you're certainly speaking to the converted. There's lots of textile enthusiasts here today. There's another question here. Thank you for the images of all your work, and especially of you with the tufting tool. It really feels to me like building a message.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that is, what I have to say about that is, when I started tufting and when I started doing portraiture like this, it really was an experiment. I think that's why it's important also to do art for you and to explore and to discover parts of yourself, because if I was worried about what people think or what people would have thought about it initially, I probably would never have gotten started. And so, yeah, I mean, find that thing that you love and are passionate about I'm very grateful for that.
Do we have any other questions? Any brave souls who want to unmute?
I did see a quick question. What sizes are my pieces?
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, generally my frame itself is 70 inches by 70 inches squared. So my pieces, my larger works nest right within that. So the biggest is usually 65 inches squared. And then the Black Lives Matter pieces, I did groups of 4 on my frame. So those sit a little bit smaller at 35 inches approximately by like 27. But those were a little smaller. I like keeping it large. And I also have some panel pieces that are about 35 inches wide and 65 inches long. So I'm hoping to get even a bigger frame and go bigger.
You need bigger yarn, bigger tufting gun.
Everything, yes. A bigger step ladder.
Oh. And Simone, are you based in Calgary? Will you continue to have a studio here?
That's right. Yes, Calgary is home, and to really continue to have that relationship across borders with New York, I'm really loving that relationship and being home and close to family. And there is a bit of a silver lining with the pandemic, is that all these talks and all these expectations can be executed over Zoom. So I'm home for now, and I love being close to the mountains.
There's another question from Sarah about the timeline of your work from concept to completion.
Good question. So concept to completion takes me about a month and a half, working quite diligently. The tufting itself takes quite a few hours. Usually, I can't give a ballpark of hours, but I'd say like 100. And then the finishing that's another thing about being a fiber artist. You finish the art, and then you got to finish the textile, which takes almost as long as creating the art itself. So whether it's a whip stitch around the edge or hand sewing the edges and tucking them in and finding ways to hang it and sewing that in. And so it really is, that's my meditative journey, is finishing each textile, really wanting to get onto the next textile, but having to finish it.
And do you work on one piece at a time?
I try to, because when I spoke before about really becoming one with the piece and channeling a narrative through that piece, it becomes my muse. And so for me to have that cross focus, it's like a relationship. I like to dedicate myself to that one piece until its completion. And sometimes you hit a hurdle, and sometimes you need to take a few days off or do some more research. And I'm okay with that breathing space, because sometimes you need it.
Okay, funny question from Sharon. I love the idea that your tufting gun is your superpower. I'm curious to know if you also have a superhero name.
Oh, that's a good one. yeah, I don't know. It would be something like dark and mysterious, like Eve, or dark moonlight, or I don't know, something. That's just improvising. But that's a good question. I should think about that.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I love that you are so influenced by women we see in the media. How do the women in your life influence your work?
Yeah, there's definitely, within womanhood, there's such a strong sisterhood that happens. And even going through my time at AU Arts, the Fibre department is predominantly women. And I'm always influenced by the women around me, and having that relationship and the vulnerability to communicate and to be open, and especially within the Black Lives Matter movement. And I noted, realizing the Black community here, there have been a lot of invitations that I've been lucky to go to, like circles of Black entrepreneurs and leaders and artists. And it's been really wonderful to open up and get opinion and draw strength and just be real with one another. So yeah, although I often, but not always, will predominantly have a predominant figure within my work, it's the women around me who really keep me going and lift me up.
Do you have particular women artists, maybe Fibre artists, that you are inspired by?
Oh, yes. Barbara Thomas, who works with paper, is amazing. Lisa Butler, of course, is just, as a quilt maker and an artist, does beautiful work. Erin M. Riley, who is a weaver. And when I was going through school, Wangechi Mutu was a huge inspiration of mine, and really helped me focus on my collage work and bringing different mediums together. And so that's always an initial starting point for my work. Faith Ringgold, there's so many female artists that I love and admire, and a growing community of that as well.
It really feels like we're on the threshold of something really exciting, and I'm so glad that you're part of it. There's another question here about color. Your use of color is gorgeous. Is your color sense innate, or have you studied color theory?
I have studied color theory. I took a course in Toronto when I was doing some interior design work. But that's a great question, because when I am creating a piece and I'm moving on to the next section, that's usually my biggest struggle, is coming up with the union of colors, and really like standing back and holding the colors and blurring your vision a bit and trying to see that energy. It's not just the colors that come together, it's also like the union that they have, and also wanting it to balance or not balance within the work. So yes, color is my life.
You've made me love fluorescent green.
Yes.
Yes. I love it. Okay, well, I'm seeing 12:52. So folks, this is your chance to ask a question of the artist. While we give people maybe a couple more minutes just to formulate your questions, Simone, could you say anything about that upcoming solo exhibition? What kind of work are you featuring? Is there a new theme, or what are you focusing on? What can you tell us?
Yes. So my last, my initial works that I was showing you that had the Black Lives Matter text behind it, and a lot of masked Black portraits. Now I've really leaned in hard to the Art Nouveau inspiration, and have taken particular panels from Alphonse Mucha and really mirrored that within my craft. And there's a particular panel series that I just completed that I'm really excited about. And even my relationship with my gun, like what I'm most excited about is to see my own growth within the gun, and even more detail that I could get, even more detail in the face and in the background. And so yeah, they're all really, really about Black womanhood and empowerment, and using that notion of advertisement from the Art Nouveau period. So a lot of it still has the text within, and some pieces don't.
Another question from Hope. Thank you, Hope. I'm thinking of the black gold tapestry that was Sandra Sawatsky that was shown at the Glenbow a few years ago, and wondering how you feel about fiber arts being classified as craft versus art. Oh, that's a loaded question.
What is loaded? All the fiber, yes, I'm sure we all have our varying opinions, but for me, I mean, I think that we're lucky in that respect, as someone who wants to be recognized as a fine art artist. I think in terms of like the reality of it, if I ever wanted to get a grant or something like that, like it's a whole different avenue for me to kind of be on the cusp of a fine artist and a craftsperson, and really owning both of those departments. But for me, craft is really rooted in a history and often a domesticity. And so to really bring in that notion of like women's work and really take that into a fine arts is quite cheeky, and something I think that is not uncommon nowadays. I mean, people aren't just using the punch needle to create area rugs for warmth. Like, they are using it as an artistic expression. And I think her name has escaped me, but really politicizing crochet and using that as a tool of like women coming together, and men and all peoples, and having a conversation. And yeah, I mean, Michelle was right. It's a loaded question. We could keep going on about that, but I'm
sure it's debated daily at the art college. A question from Dan. What advice would you give to other emerging artists to keep going with their practice after graduating, or who haven't attended an institution?
Yes. Don't stop and be curious. Like I mentioned before, if I was worrying too much about what it looked like, or if people would like it, just really put yourself out there. And I have to be honest, when I graduated, I was a little bit ruthless. Like I kept on my craft. I created my own press release and like sent it out about, well, here's what I'm working on. Like, I want to share with you. I want to show you. So just, be ruthless, and follow your passion and explore. And don't be afraid to use your past inspirations and things that you love to incorporate within your work. Like, for example, my love of Art Nouveau. Like, I can't really describe why I love it so much and why it speaks to me, but I just had to use source and inspiration within my work. And just don't be afraid to try.
That's good advice. And thank you for that. And another question from Morgan. How did you find your way to tufting and textiles? What drew you towards fiber as opposed to more traditional mediums like drawing and painting?
That's a really great question. So when I was in the theater world, I moved to Toronto to apprentice with a Black theater company called Obsidian Theater. And from there, I was really immersed in acting, but I segued into set design. And I really found a love for being a set designer. And from there, I wanted to go back to school to study interior design. But to me, that wasn't quite right because I didn't want to have to negotiate with people what they want. I just wanted to do what I wanted. So I applied to ACAD and got in, and was considering the visual arts program, the VCD program, or Fibre. And Fibre really drew me in to initially do surface design. And then I got hooked in the beautiful weave room and the jacquard and, natural dye and prosthetic dye and all of those mediums. And so, that just being invested in fibers really drew me in. I think, was there another part to that question?
I can totally understand that. Maybe that's what I'm going to do after I retire. And I think last question goes to Jenna. Once the world opens up and there are places on your list you'd like to travel to, I guess what places would you like to travel to for inspiration or potential residencies?
Well, first and foremost, I'd love to go to New York to my opening. That's at the top of my list. And from there, in terms of inspiration, I mean, I want to go to Japan. Was always somewhere I wanted to go to see the cherry blossoms. And then I also want to go to India because my partner's from there, and potentially have my own tufting cloth made and things like that. So my inspiration kind of draws from all these different longings that I have. But for me, it's also really important to stay connected to the movement and to my community, and just to keep my eyes open on this global landscape that we have right now.
Well, that's a wonderful sentiment to finish off with. Simone, this has been absolutely wonderful, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing and how generously you shared it with us. I hope that all of you, if you're in Edmonton right now, that you can get to the Alberta Craft Council. I don't know. And Saskia, if you're still there, maybe you can open up and tell people how to get into the Craft Council, whether you're open or have to make a reservation. And similarly, we'll see your work next summer at C Space at the Alberta Craft Council Gallery there. And look forward to a big announcement from you. And all I'll say is that I went there and I checked out the company you'll be keeping, and wow, really exciting. I'm so pleased for you. The Craft Council is open to the public. Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, and I want to thank you all so much for joining and for listening to me. And there's just another quick question that I wanted to answer, which was asking if the tufting gun requires some strenuous upper body strength. And yes, it does. I am constantly, my time limit to tuft is there's a window, and then it's, you have to do a lot of strength training, and I do a lot of stretching and yoga because it is quite hard on the shoulders and wrists.
Great.
But thank you.
Sorry, I missed that question. I can't see everything on the right there. So, wow, we'll keep up the fitness routine. And thank you all. The finished, cleaned up, edited version of this talk will be posted to our YouTube channel probably in about a week. So watch the Nickle or any of the social media platforms for the link. Dick's talk from last week has been posted, and Scott Coleman from 2 weeks ago has also been posted. And come back and join us next week for Shelley Butler talking about curatorial dreaming. That should be really interesting. And thank you again, Simone, and best of luck with everything, all the exciting things that are happening in your future. And thank you all for joining us.